When I got stressed, I didn't eat a lot. I probably shouldn't have had enough beers that I did at that time either. I visited a friend of mine Sunday, May 15th in the afternoon, and it was a nice spring day and it was beautiful. As I went to leave his house, he said, "You almost fell, Rodney. You act like you're dizzy." And I said, "Yeah, I'm stressed and I haven't eaten and I'm just, things aren't going well for me." So I had went home that afternoon. My girlfriend was there. I went into the bathroom and that's where I fell, and I cracked my skull in the right quadrant here. I didn't realize I had fallen. My girlfriend heard the noise, and then when she saw me standing, she said, "You're bleeding from the ear." And I said, "Well, I think I need to take a shower and get in bed." And I didn't realize the impact that that trauma had happened with my head. So that moment there, I didn't know it, but I had fallen again in my living room. I remember being shuffled out in a stretcher to one hospital where they immediately did some scans on me and they knew something was very bad. They realized I had 3 subdermal hematomas, and I was induced into a coma. And my mom came from Warrensburg down there. I think my brothers and sisters filtered in too, and it told my mom that the chance of your son surviving is probably about 20%. She also then said, "We also have some more news about your son. It's either a birth defect or a sports injury, but he has some issue in his upper neck, and he has to have surgery, because if he does not have surgery, the chances of him are become a paraplegic, or he won't live either way." So the cards were stacked against me, apparently. So the good news is that I'm fine and dandy most of the time. With my brain injury, I have to create something every day. If I don't, I get a tremendous amount of anxiety. And it's important. I just traveled to Boston this weekend. Again, while I was there, I was doing artwork. Wherever I go, I have my sketch pad with me and I have my tools with me, and it's important I do that. And I think it's also helped me recover more so than perhaps some other people. So the art actually is a huge part of what I need to do to keep my my anxiety down, or my sanity the way it is. And I meet so many wonderful people through that. However, it sounds like a good story now, but when I did get moved from the hospital to upstate New York, I was living at my sister's house. I spent most of my time not there. I would find myself driving my car, going somewhere, someplace. And then once again, I wasn't getting the help I wanted. I went to a place now that I am actually a part of the board members now, but at that time, 5 years ago, they didn't give me the help that I needed, and I began medicating myself again with alcohol.
Addiction's been probably the most difficult thing that I've ever had to deal with, because it's always there. It's always there. It's not like an illness that you treat that goes away eventually, You have to treat it. A lot of people do different stuff. They go to meetings, or they, read literature or whatever. Meetings are the most obvious. But I always have problems leaving the house, so I have to come up with these creative methods. But holy crap, I wrote all this stuff about addiction. I wonder what it says. So it's like my process art notebook. And this is starting of the year. So this is all of the drawings and writings I've done since January, since 2017. I started 2017 by writing, and I think it got to like a 24-page essay about my addiction, because I've been having a hard time with it. So I just decided to get on my typewriter and start typing things up. But it helped. It started helping because I have a lot of background in addiction, like education and groups and stuff like that. And I forget that I have that information stored somewhere inside my brain. So it comes out and I learn new stuff as I write. I think it gets pretty analytical. Whatever has come up for me at that moment where I sit down and write, I just analyze it. Because I'm sitting down and writing for a reason at that moment. So I kind of want to bring out that problem because I'm sitting there for a reason, and so that way I will just start typing and it eventually surfaces, and then I'm like, well, of course. And it's always the simplest things that are either the answer or the problem. It's always the simplest. It's never the complex. It's always the closest to you. And you can't like see it because it's so close to you. Yeah, it can get complicated. My addiction's been doing really well. I've been talking more, and my art, I've been doing so much art. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff. So the hands-on always helps because it grounds me. And I realize I don't need anything. I don't need to drink or use. I can avoid by making art.
All these are pieces from jail. There's probably 48 pieces, and this isn't so much that the quality of the work itself, it's that the emotion that was in that, because some of these pieces actually are coming requests from inmates. I have not shown these to the public, and this is the actual, I think it was the C block or A block, I don't know which block it was. It's typical, they're all the same, most of the time the same contractor defines and presents and provides what these facilities are. So they're very well lit, they're very safe, and they're very clean. There was a guy there, his name was Tiny, and Tiny was an extremely large man, huge. He asked me if I can draw, and I said, I don't know. Why? What do you want? And he said, I'd like a birthday card for my grandson. And when he asked me that, he had tears in his eyes. And that is the first time I began drawing since high school, and I haven't stopped since that day. You can get a lot of things in jail, I learned, but getting a pencil was a bit of a challenge. But once I was doing what I was doing, pencils seemed to just fall to me somehow. This story right here is one where the father would take the son hunting, which he loved doing with him, but then he would explain that his dad would always be drunk when he's hunting and fall asleep. So somewhat was comical, it was illustration. At night I would put all my pieces of work on all the cafeteria tables. There was probably, that I used, was probably 8 of them. So it became a gallery in jail, which is, I didn't realize it was an art gallery. And a lot of the work, as you know, was helping people. From that it would feed what I needed to put on paper. And I didn't realize the impact that artwork would have in jail. It was changing the facility, and I didn't know it. So I transitioned from these pieces here, which are from jail or behind bars, into my charcoal. And the reason I moved into charcoal was that, if you notice, my paper actually gets larger because obviously I couldn't find this size in incarceration. This piece here is significant, and again, who would think that as a result of this piece being created, I was invited to go to an Indian spring equinox awakening. What caught this woman's attention here was the fact that I put 3 rocks here lined up together. She said that that's very significant in a lot of respects, and from that point there, she said, you need to come to this Indian Apache spiritual spring equinox. So I went in there, and lo and behold, there was 2 large wolves that were in there. And I realized at that moment there that my artwork was taking me to different places. And one thing I learned about what I do is when something's being presented, regardless how uncomfortable it seems to be, I need to follow the lead and I need to go. So I needed to go to that. A woman wanted to purchase a print of this, and she wanted it. She described what she wanted to buy, and she said, "I'd like to buy the wolf with a horse." And I said, "I don't have such a thing. I don't have a horse and a wolf together." Well, she came over to show me what she saw, and in here she sees the wolf, obviously, but in here she sees the ears and the snout and the two eyes of the horse in here, the face of that. And then she also pointed out, too, that she sees the wings here of eagles or whatever else she refers to that, phoenixes and so on, here and here. So I started looking at my work more independently of my own and standing out. And sometimes, in a good percentage of my work, there's something else that's embedded into my work that I'm not aware of. It's a different form of language is what it is.
I use the medium choice as a way of getting it out. I change medium if one isn't doing it. I will keep trying different methods until I find it, which I found in sculpture lately. So it took like all these attempts, the writing, the drawing, the printmaking, until I got to the sculpture, the plaster particularly. I will always go back to painting and drawing. Drawing is primal and it's the basis for all artwork, and you can explore much with such a simple thing, like using a pencil and paper, you know. Plus you can do it anywhere. I just love the feeling of it. Drawing with different instruments and on different surfaces. Even painting, like depending on how you're feeling, different utensils bring out different feelings or sounds. Sometimes the sounds bring out the feelings or the feel of the instrument. It's strange, I can't really, it's just kind of a thing. It's almost like, you know how you hear a skateboarder when they're on the sidewalk? You can hear the skateboarding sound. That brings back my childhood of the fun times at my skateboarding. That was just really fun for me. So like things like that, the sound and the feel will just bring back the fun ease of it. Instead of having to deal with all that, I can just sketch a little here for a while. And that was the one place I could focus on. So that brought my attention here instead of out there with what's going on. I can control this. If you do something long enough, you're going to become good at it. And where does that end up? Somewhere where there's people, you know, and that is difficult. However, it being about your artwork, the creativity itself is generated with the circle of people. So I think that in itself is lowering the level of anxiety, because you're not alone, you know. Birdie. All of my art's therapy. I honestly, I have to do art because I probably go crazy. All of those sculptures originated from this. The cement that's on here, the concrete, that's really what I started making some extra concrete just for fun. I put some burlap in it. So there were pieces of that laying around. Then I decided to maybe use some plaster. So I started making individual plaster, and I got a little bit of clay and realized I could make molds with the clay, and I just really was playing around because it seemed right.
And just like magic, I wanted to start learning about pastels and watercolors and so on. And I hadn't purchased any. And then, a few months ago, a gentleman walked in I've never met. And he walks in and he provides 2 brand new cases, one of watercolor crayons and one with watercolor pencils. I'd never heard of them. So I began using those in some respects. And this is an example of, you can see the merge of the shadows with the charcoal and with the graphite, which I was using. And then in fact I go into adding some color. And again, this is practicing color. So I probably would modify things a little bit, and I still may. I may lower the hue down or make the sky a little bit more creamy. But that was the merge of when you can see this moving into here, and this is pastel. So what I've learned is that I can take this print and I can grab my watercolor crayons and I can begin adding color into this, because this print is a print, so it doesn't harm any of this charcoal. I talked about the sky becoming more creamy here, which is what I'm probably going to fine-tune that piece there. Again, the pastel I'm working with, I'm learning that I don't like the texture of what this appears. This isn't original. This has not been reproduced yet. I still use charcoal, but I'm thinking I'm going to work with something a little bit different. Although the colorations up there are probably pretty good. Sometimes what I put on paper actually becomes part of my reality. I can sometimes, on occasion, I can draw something of a building or a place I'd like to have in Glens Falls, and once I put it on paper, it will just arrive. And it may take a little while, but I'll be like, wow, I drew that, and all of a sudden here it is. And again, it's a form of communication of something much different than we're aware of, but it's all for the benefit of not me entirely, it's for many other people. So when I put something on paper, it's just not what I want. It's what I think would be good for the community. The drug court, when I finished that after 2 years, I spoke to 100 or so people during the graduation of that, and I didn't know what I had been saying apparently, but when I was done, the county sheriff came over to me and he said that, do you know why you went to jail, Rodney? And I said, yes. I said, I was drinking and driving. And he said, well, you were. He said, but the real reason why you came here was the fact that you changed the whole facility and you changed me as my job now. I know I'm supposed to help people. I didn't realize that was happening, but it happened right after I left too. But from there I went to a rehabilitation in Syracuse. 60 of the guys there, most of them were parolees. They already were felons. There was one guy had committed manslaughter, it broke a guy's neck. Another one was, they all did different. One guy robbed 4 banks. But I got to work and know most of those people, and I talked to who I needed to talk to, and the other ones I didn't. But there was a lot of caring in there among us when we would tell our stories to each other, and every night I would do artwork again. Amazing things have continued to happen, and my work is continuing to move upward, and so every day is a beautiful, wonderful day, and I'm always down in the evenings talking to a lot of business people and a lot of other people in the art arena, but a lot of people that are just good about what they do, and they love what they do, and they care about people.
It pretty much started thinking that I just needed to get rid of some baggage. I had a bunch of just found objects, junk, things I've acquired over the years that are just getting too... I was accumulating too much stuff. So I just decided to try one thing, to put a couple different things together and then put chicken wire around it and see how that would hold it and how it would look. I like the idea of using unconventional things, not your regular sculpture, plaster sculpture, or whatever it is, just not something you've seen around or has been done millions of times. And yes, hands have been cast millions of times. But it's just fun. This was all more for me, really, because I needed something. This stuff wasn't for anybody else. It was more like a hands-on, fun grounding thing that I was doing. I was really there when I was doing it. And that's always what I want from my work, is to see how grounded I can get. Like, can I do something else where I can feel more grounded? It's inner work. It's all inside of the chicken wire, and this is all about me. I mean, seriously. This was the first one that I cast, this fist. I like to take the pliers and make it tighter, make the whole thing form around the objects as much as I can, or in different shapes that I feel like doing. Like some of them are kind of fun, like the soldier in there. I thought that was cool. The wire itself, you have to be careful because you'll hurt yourself with the wire. The chicken wire. I have a couple scratches, but you have to be careful. Mm-hmm. Or if you do get hurt, honestly, that will ground you more because you're like, whoa, I gotta be careful. I gotta pay attention. So even the chicken wire itself helps. After I make something, when a little bit of time passes, I'll look at them again and realize exactly what I was working on. When I was doing this, I was having really difficult feelings because of trauma and the things that were coming up with my family and everything. And I'll look at something like this that I made when that stuff was going on, and I'll realize the time that had passed while making it, that I was allowing my brain to absorb that, and in this time, it gave me time to really be okay. Sometimes other things, not very often here, I would do just also for time so I wouldn't drink or use. Sometimes you just need to be busy. So, can't think of anything that's better than to just do something that takes time and that you can be involved in. I think just spending your time really getting absorbed in what you're doing is probably the hardest thing anybody could do. Focus, concentration, being where you are at that moment is probably the most difficult thing. But it's something I want, so I keep at it.